Most sports fans are no stranger to the phrase choking under pressure. Whether you have played a sport or just enjoy watching one, everyone has experienced a time where pressure affected their performance. This can look like freezing up, making a bad decision, or simply just underperforming at the moment, all due to the pressures of the situation. This was the case of the 2014 Seattle Seahawks when they returned to the Super Bowl for the second time in a row to face off against Tom Brady and the New England Patriots. Notably one of the most historic examples of choking under pressure, the Seahawks fumbled their opportunity to become the first back-to-back Super Bowl champions in a decade by throwing an interception in the red zone with 20 seconds left in the game. Left in awe, sports fans around the world were all thinking and saying the same thing: the Seahawks should have ran the ball. No matter the sport or situation, choking under pressure is a common response when experiencing a high-pressure environment. If you've ever played a sport, you've trained just for moments like this, when the stakes are high and you could be the one to seal the deal. Outside of sports, we may experience times where we may feel pressure at work and make impulsive decisions you didn't plan or expect to make. A study done by scientists in the United Kingdom, Denise Hill and Gareth Shaw, found that multiple different factors contributed to a person choking under pressure. These scientists broke the results down into 4 sections, analyzing perceived antecedents, perceived mechanisms, perceived moderators, and perceived consequences. The perceived antecedents described in the study were important games, personal expectations, personal perception of individual responsibility, presence of an audience, physical or mental errors, poor preparation, opponents, self-confidence, or physiological fatigue. The perceived consequences, which are the results of choking under pressure that were seen in these players, were described as a significant drop in performance, negative effect, withdrawal, and reflection. We aren't the only species to experience this. Meg Sosnowski is a graduate student at Georgia State University with expertise in cognitive psychology. Majority of her work deals with primates, studying how they think and interact with changing social environments. Sosnowski also has a degree in neuroscience. Dealing with cognitive processes and structure are her area of expertise. She has also worked with this species of monkey, capuchin, for over 8 years, so she is very familiar with this species and their tendencies. While studying capuchin monkey behavior, Meg and other researchers at Georgia State University discovered that monkeys also choke under pressure, like humans, in high-pressure situations. During the study, the capuchin monkeys were given an opportunity to participate in a delayed match-to-sample task where they were rewarded for successfully completing the task, with the reward corresponding with the task level of difficulty. Here's a description of the game from Meg.
Well, like you mentioned, our monkeys play video games using little joysticks that we designed for them, and that lets us ask questions about how they think. So for my study, I designed and programmed a game in which the monkeys needed to find and select an image that they had seen just a few seconds earlier. And when I was training them, I trained them to associate a change in background color with a much harder trial that required them to remember the image for a much longer period of time. And this harder trial was very, very highly rewarded for correct answers. And it also featured a consequence of a timeout, essentially, where they couldn't play for a short period of time if they get it wrong. So these so-called high-pressure trials were both harder and higher stakes during training, but they were also more highly rewarded. And we also tried to keep the high-pressure situations a little bit more rare than their typical trials. So they were interspersed within those lower pressure, more typically rewarded trials at a rate of about 1 in 4.
This study proves to be an interesting insight into the mental processes of monkeys, which happen to be very fundamentally similar to those we have as humans.
And what we found was, even though these high pressure trials were no more difficult than their low pressure trials, some monkeys were significantly more likely to get those trials wrong. And this type of individual variation is very typical of what we see in humans. Some humans are better at performing under pressure, not everyone chokes. And even those humans that are more prone to choking don't do so all the time.
These scientists also found that there is a negative relationship between having high cortisol levels and being able to perform under pressure. Though measuring cortisol levels is not easy, if you have a high cortisol level, you're more likely to fail under pressure. This study ultimately uncovered how psychological pressures affect performance, but from a different perspective, as most studies on humans are based on sports performance.